Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley flip-flopped after saying that she believed that frozen embryos were the same as babies. Haley told NBC News in an interview that embryos to me are babies, which, by the way, they are not. They will eventually grow into babies, but as they were frozen embryos, they're more like a popsicle than anything. Or, well, okay, they're frozen cells. But anyway, this is in response to the Alabama Supreme Court ruling that embryos have the same exact rights as a fully formed human being, which is insane. Okay? But she said, when you talk about an embryo, you're talking about, to me, that's a life. And so I do see where that's coming from when they talk about that. Okay. So now, again, that equivocation here was called out by Gayle King. And so that same day, after being asked by King, she then went on to say this.
Well, first of all, I didn't say that I agreed with the Alabama ruling. What the question that I was asked is, do I believe an embryo is a baby? I do think that if you look in the definition, an embryo is considered an unborn baby. And so, yes, I believe from my stance that that is. The difference is, and this is what I say about abortion as well, we need to treat these issues with the utmost respect. I had trouble having both of my children. Mm-hmm. I am very aware of what it means to go through artificial insemination, all of those things related to in vitro. I know what that is. And I also know the importance between a doctor and the parents is very important to have those conversations. This case was based on, and should be based on, the rights of those parents for their embryos, and to make sure that they have the responsibility with the doctors on how those are handled. Nothing more than that.
So now, the case, prior to this case in Alabama, embryos, frozen embryos, were treated as a matter of property. Alabama, the Supreme Court ruling, changes that into, again, treating the embryos as if they are fully formed human beings. So that means there are some major issues that come up, okay? The ruling opens the door to the banning of IVF. Classifying embryos as children under state law raises problematic issues, such as the issue of unused embryos, okay? They often get destroyed, which makes sense, right? Now, if they're considered people, though, that opens up families and clinics to wrongful death lawsuits. Because, again, it would be considered murder if you destroy an embryo that's frozen. Not only that, but if there's a malfunction or a mistake, oh, look at that, another lawsuit. Oops, somebody knocked something off the table. Somebody accidentally unplugged the freezer, and it's a mass murder, okay? So, again, those are the issues here that are raised by this ruling. And it's already caused clinics in Alabama to pause their IVF because doctors are afraid of being hit with criminal charges. So people who want to be parents in that state now, well, they have to suffer, okay? Even more so because they desperately want a child. But since Alabama now believes that a collection of cells is the same thing as a viable fetus, a human being, well, I mean, now they're not going to be able to do the IVF, okay? Now, getting back to Haley, what she's trying to do is be a weatherman, okay? To try to have it both ways. That's always been the problem with Nikki Haley. I'm trying to have it both ways here. I'm going to try to walk the line, and she never does a good job of it because there are some things you just can't walk the line on, okay? And so, and the reason that she does this is because she's an empty suit. She wants power. She's trying to appease the staunch pro-life right wing. And then, at the same time, tries to moderate because, well, it turns out even the pro-lifers don't really care as much about this issue, but she's trying to be like, oh, but they're human beings. Now, what do I mean by pro-lifers not caring about this? Embryos. I mean, fertilized embryos should be, in their mind, fully formed human beings, right? Personhood. I mean, that's what these personhood bills would effectively do. But yet, when you ask them, turns out, according to a 2022 Washington Post article, political scientists analyzing a decade plus of survey data found that only a slim minority of voters who oppose abortion also oppose IVF. Well, that's weird. Weird. Even though, again, those are human beings. Those fertilized embryos. They're the same as a human being. So obviously, that should matter a lot to anti-abortion abortion opponents. But yet, doesn't seem to. Weird. Now, Nikki Haley has also called for a national consensus on abortion in debates, instead of the bans and restrictions favored by some of her primary opponents. But that's funny because she had previously backed those kinds of bans. During her time in the State House of Representatives from 2004 to 2010, Haley backed 2 right-to-life bills that would have significantly limited abortion access statewide, even though neither bill ultimately became law. In 2010, Haley co-sponsored a bill proposing that life begins at fertilization, with due process and equal protection both applying to embryos, essentially imposing a complete ban on abortion. The bill, which died in committee, did not include any exceptions for rape, incest, or the life and health of the mother. So that's apparently her true position on that, at least, because her voters, the people who put her into power, that's what they wanted. Okay. Now, in 2005, Haley voted for another bill that made a similar due process and equal protection proposal, beginning at fertilization, but included an exception for rape victims taking a morning after pill. Now, while campaigning for president, Haley has avoided this issue, dodged specifics. And that's because abortion, turns out all these anti-abortion bills are incredibly unpopular across the country. They've caused significant Republican losses in a lot of these races. Turns out, people like bodily autonomy. They like freedom. Who would have known? And so, nonetheless, what she's doing now in avoiding the specifics is that she is attempting to walk this line and claim to be more electable than Donald Trump. So, look, Trump, he's like, yeah, I'll do an abortion ban. I mean, that's pretty clear, right? He also appointed the justices that got rid of Roe. So, kind of responsible for the end of reproductive freedom in this country, in states, for example, like Alabama. Now she's claiming, I'm more electable than Donald Trump. I mean, that's her entire message, right? But here's the problem. That may have worked in the past, the electability argument, when it comes to Republicans. Now we're in the age of Trump where they don't really care about who's more electable. They care about who's more extreme. They care about who reflects, their insane beliefs more than, I should say the most. Who reflects their insane beliefs the most? Okay? Now, the problem with that is that, sure, you can win a Republican primary, but that doesn't leave a lot of hope for the general election where, unsurprisingly, most of the country disagrees with the most extreme Republican positions. That's why Nikki Haley has absolutely no chance, no matter how much she tries to walk that line.